2 Halloweens ago, I did something really stupid, but let me start from the beginning. So, I started working at a small pizza shop in my hometown, and after a few days, I became good friends with the person who cleaned the bar next door in the early mornings. She was really interesting and had a dark style, very mysterious. I also became friends with some of the cooks. One of the cooks and I started hanging out almost every weekend. Eventually, the housekeeper was fine with us coming over, but I wasn't ready for what I saw when I went to her place. It looked like a Halloween and horror party store exploded inside her house. She had a lot of weird collections like stones, dried flowers, herbs, and many books about witches and magic. Her most prized item was a human skull she got from someone years ago. It took a bit of time to get used to her house, even though it was creepy, but still felt welcoming. Now fast forward to Halloween 2020, and it was a full moon. Halloween was the only holiday my friends celebrated, so we decided to go all out. We planned to make it really special, but by that time, the cook we had become friends with was acting really annoying, and it was hard to be around him, so we came up with a fun plan to scare him. My friend, her daughter, and I gathered together one afternoon to talk about what we wanted to do. I mentioned that it was a full moon, so I suggested we visit the oldest cemetery near us at midnight to do some EVPs with him. I'll call my friend Evelyn. She was really into magic and had a collection of magical items. Even though I didn't really believe in that stuff, I decided to go along with it for fun. Her daughter then chimed in with a clever idea to make a fake debug box. She explained that it would look like an old mysterious box that was said to hold a spirit. When we got to the cemetery, she would smash the box on the ground and start acting weird to scare the cook. We probably should have thought it through better. I know I should have. On Halloween night, we were a bit late leaving, but around 11:30, we finally left Evelyn's place. Evelyn did an amazing job making the fake debug box look very real. As we drove, we didn't think much about the box. I had brought my EVP recorder and electromagnetic field meter detector with us. I set the electromagnetic field meter detector in the door while we drove, and I had it turned off. Suddenly, Evelyn's daughter giggled and shook the box. Out of nowhere, my electromagnetic field meter started making noises and beeping even though it wasn't turned on. When we got to the cemetery, we nervously got out of the car. The whole area was glowing with the leaves shining in the moonlight. The tombstones looked almost magical, glowing as the moonlight reflected off the granite. The sky was clear, and we were all alone, so we slowly made our way to the back part of the cemetery. It was so quiet out there. We found a good spot, and Evelyn set everyone to sit in a circle. She then opened a container and poured her special salt mix around us. She warned us not to leave for any reason until we were done. The cook looked really scared, and I was dreading the strange feelings in the air. So we all sat down, and Evelyn placed the box in the middle of us and set the detector and EVP recorder next to it. Her daughter started using a spirit box app, and the sounds that came from it made us all silent. It said, "Let me out." Then the detector went crazy. Suddenly, I had a sinking feeling that I wasn't alone with them anymore, and that we were in serious trouble. Silence fell over us, and we all stared at each other. Then, as if we were snapped out of a trance, we heard footsteps coming from the woods, very close to us. We could clearly see that no one was there. I closed my eyes, grabbed Evelyn's hand, and said, "I'm officially scared now, and we should really stop this." "It's fine. Ghosts aren't real. Come on, you and I both know that's a lie." Just then, the cook stood up and said, "Hey, I think we really need to get out of here. I can hear people all around us." At that point, he kicked open the salt circle and started walking to the car. Evelyn's daughter smashed the box and said, "Forget it. Let's go." So we all hurried after them. But when we got home, the girls and I realized we had really messed up because we didn't close the door we opened. We actually caught something in the box, and we might have let it out by accident. All I know is that since then, none of us four have felt right. I never feel like I'm alone, and if I'm working by myself, I always have to double check that I'm really alone. From September to November 2021, I worked at Spirit Halloween. For those who don't know, Spirit Halloween is a seasonal store that finds empty buildings or vacant stores to set up shop. They create a Halloween store filled with costumes, decorations, and creepy items. The store stays open for a short time, usually until November 2nd, right after Halloween. In 2021, you may have seen that Spirit Halloween opened many new stores in different towns and cities, including places that had never had a Spirit Halloween before, and my town was one of the lucky ones to get a new store. Now, I'll keep it vague to protect my privacy, but the store was set up in an older building. The building had been around for years and was part of our small historic town. Since I am a big fan of horror, I applied for a job as soon as I heard the store was opening in 2 days. Unfortunately, I got the job and went through training, learning about the different costumes and decorations we would sell. My co-workers were great and very friendly, but I hope I didn't annoy them too much, especially since I was the only high school student there. When I was hired, I showed that I could be a good cashier, even when some customers were rude or difficult. I stayed calm and treated everyone with respect. I remember one busy day when I was coming back from the break room to finish my break and start my shift again. I walked around one of the walls that held up the costumes and props. I only got halfway to the front where the registers were when I heard someone call my name from the back room door. I turned around to see who called me, thinking it might be a coworker needing help or a friend from school checking in on me, but there was no one around me. I was just surrounded by customers looking for costumes and decorations. I assumed that whoever needed to talk to me would come to the front, but my manager didn't say anything, and neither did my co-workers or friends. It felt a little strange, but I didn't think much about it at the time. November 1st was the second to last day before the store closed to the public and some of the staff. I worked the closing shift that night from 4 to 8 with a couple of other co-workers. The store was very quiet, even though everything was 25% off. Hardly anyone came into the shop. After about an hour, it was just me, another sales associate, my manager, and the assistant manager. For a short time, I was the only one in the main part of the store. My coworker was in the back, my manager was also in the back, and the assistant manager had just gone to the restroom. I was walking around, realizing that I was completely alone and had the whole store to myself for the first time while working there. But then, about 20 to 30 feet away from the register, one of our animatronics suddenly turned on. If you don't know, the animatronics at Spirit Halloween are activated by motion sensors or pressure pads that make them move or speak. You can also set them to keep going off automatically. None of the animatronics had been working all night. They were just standing in the middle of the room as decorations, waiting to be taken apart since the store was about to close for the season, and I hadn't even paid much attention to them because they were usually only active when lots of customers were around. I figured it was just a glitch, or that the animatronic were faulty. Near the end of our shift, I was sitting on one of the counters and my assistant manager was in front of me doing paperwork. My coworker was in the restroom. I was watching everything in the store in front of me, not really paying attention to what was behind me, and started zoning out. We barely had any customers that day, and as we got closer to closing time, everything felt like it was moving in slow motion. While I was looking off to the side, I noticed something that I first thought was a reflection from the window, but it wasn't. I didn't catch it clearly because it happened so fast, but I could make out a long blue-white shape, almost like a glowing blob, floating near one of the shelves. My assistant manager, who was in front of me, turned his head toward the white blob and said, "That's weird. I thought I saw something." I still couldn't focus on the blob, but I remember clearly seeing it melt into the air and completely disappear. The strange thing was that I saw it for longer than my manager did, but it seemed to vanish as soon as he looked at it. At first, when I saw it, I thought it was just a reflection in the window, but that couldn't be true. There were large black sheets of paper covering the windows for decoration. Only about a foot of the window was actually exposed, so there wasn't enough light coming in to create a reflection for both of us to see, and it didn't make sense for the blob to be a reflection, and that thought made me even more curious about what I had just seen. So after everything that happened, I really think the store building is haunted to some degree. I believe that because a Spirit Halloween store is usually busy and full of people during the fall, but then becomes very quiet in the last days of November. Whatever was in that building might have started acting up because it wanted more attention. It didn't have the energy from all the customers anymore, so it probably got upset. I told my coworkers about this the next day, and many of them said they heard noises in the back room, like someone was inside. Sometimes they even saw costume bags moving by themselves. So overall, it was a weird experience, but it wasn't scary or anything. The job paid minimum wage, but it was a lot of fun. Plus, it wasn't like a ghost was trying to make our jobs hard. It just made things more interesting. On Halloween night, back when I was in 8th grade, I'm 27 now, my friend Kayla and I were giddy with excitement messing around and getting dressed up in our costumes. I'm not even going to say what we were for that Halloween. It's too cringy. Anyway, this night was a special night for us girls because this was going to be the last year for us to go trick-or-treating. We thought that once we became freshmen in high school, trick-or-treating would be too childish for the new cool high school students to be participating in. So we were going all out, especially with the amount of candy, grabbing pillowcases that we planned to fill entirely. We practically skipped out my front door ready to begin, in our opinion, the greatest night and holiday of the year. We didn't waste any time going door to door, street after street, that we didn't even realize that hours had passed. Back during this time, the trick-or-treating time was a hell of a lot longer than the 2 or 3 hours it is now. Back then, it just ended when the kids decided to end it. I can remember one year my sister, Kayla, and I stayed out until almost 11 p.m. Most of the houses would have already stopped answering their doors, but there were always a few houses still willing to pass out candy. I didn't even think to look at the time, until I noticed that there were less and less kids each street we came to. So when I looked at my phone, I said to Kayla, "It's 9:30, we should probably get back to my house. We can watch a movie and stuff ourselves with this," proudly lifting up my pillowcase that was at least more than halfway full. We slowly start walking back towards my house, and as we were passing each street, we noticed how eerily quiet it had gotten, seemingly out of nowhere. People were turning off their porch lights, signaling they were not going to be passing out any more candy. Now, I was a paranoid person back then, and I'm still a paranoid person to this day, probably even more so now. So when I got that feeling, that chill that runs up your back and your shoulders tense up, something is off, I thought to myself. I look side to side and get an urge to look behind me. I slowly turned my head around, looking over my shoulder, and what I saw nearly made me miss myself. About 4 houses down from us was Michael Myers, or someone dressed as Michael Myers, I should say, who was slowly walking behind us. But to me, at that time, it might as well be the real Michael Myers. He stopped, staring back at me, not moving any muscle, just staring. Now this would be creepy to anyone, but this was literally my worst nightmare. My number one childhood fear just so happens to be Michael Myers. A little backstory: when I was about 4, my mom was busy cleaning the kitchen as I sat in the living room, playing with my toys with the TV going in the background. The creepy music had caught my attention, so I started glancing up at the movie while playing with my toys. I grew less and less interested in my toys and had my eyes glued to the TV, already starting to grow nervous and scared by just the music alone. You know the part in the movie where Michael Myers pops out of the closet, grabbing a hold of the victim and lifting him up in the air against the wall as his victim desperately tries to break free, but is paralyzed with fear. And then Michael pulls back the knife and brutally stabs the guy to the wall, pinning him to the wall and in the air. Well, my 4-year-old self had never seen something so gruesome and altogether just absolutely terrifying. And at that age, I believed it was real. In my 4-year-old mind, this was really happening to someone. My eyes bulged out of my head, instantly breaking out into tears, literally screaming my head off. His mask, the brutality, seeing someone being stabbed in this heinous murder. It blew my mind, and all at once, I felt so anxious, scared, sad, just panicking. My mom comes rushing over, frantically trying to figure out what's wrong, scooping me up in her arms, and I was still screaming and pointed at the TV. By then, the movie continued to the part where Michael Myers is dressed up with the sheet over his body, with the glasses on over the sheet that he stole off the body of the victim, obviously pretending to be the guy he just murdered. The sheet freaked me out even more than Michael's mask, watching the masked killer walking slowly closer and closer up behind the girl on the phone, and I clung to my mom, sobbing and burying my face into her shoulder. She looked over at the TV saying, "Oh my God, how the hell did this get on? It's okay, trying to soothe me as she turned the channel off. I cried for at least an hour or more, just absolutely traumatized. After that incident, I couldn't sleep at all, especially alone in my bed, and absolutely could not stand the dark. I knocked on my parents' bedroom door for months, begging them to let me sleep in their bed with them, where I swear, in my head, I was convinced he was going to come down the dark hallway, silently creeping into my room, and stab me in my sleep. I did not get over my fear of Michael Myers until I was in my early 20s, so being in 8th grade, walking down a dark street, no one around besides just Kay and I, and seeing my absolute worst nightmare walking slowly behind us. I swear I thought I was going to pass out. I looked over at Kayla, my voice trembling, and whispered, "There is somebody following us. He's dressed as Michael Myers, about 4 houses down. Pick up the pace, but do not start running." Kayla turned, looking slightly over her shoulder, and snapped her head back forward. "What the hell? That's so creepy." "Well, we got 2 blocks to go. We'll see if he follows us when we turn." I nod, a million thoughts going through my head. Maybe I'm overreacting. It is Halloween after all. But why is he alone? And to follow 2 young girls? When we got to my street, I glanced behind me, and I swear my heart stopped in that moment. He wasn't behind us anymore. I panicked, darting my eyes all around me. Oh my God, where did he go? He's gone. Kayla turns around, stopping in her tracks, squinting her eyes, trying to scan the area. Maybe he turned down a different street. He probably wasn't even following us to begin with, she said, as she spun back around, heading down the street again. And then I spotted him. He stepped out from behind a tree, but now he was only 2 houses away. He started walking towards us, gaining on us as I stood there frozen in fear. I screamed, "Go!" Kayla whipped around. We shrieked as we started sprinting the rest of the way. But then I feel my legs start to wobble. Oh God, please no, this can't be real. It just can't be. I thought to myself, somewhat in denial, that this was actually happening. Could this really be happening? In that moment, I knew I had one goal, and that was to make it through my front door. We sprint up my driveway. Both of us practically crashed into my front door, frantically turning the doorknob, and then my heart dropped. The door was locked. I'm pounding and pounding on the door, screaming for somebody to please hurry and open the door. I look behind me, and there he is, stepping onto the driveway, still heading straight for us. Where is everybody? I glance back behind me, and he's gone. I went silent, listening intently for any noise, when all of a sudden he slowly came around the side of my house, just a few feet away. This means he walked around the left side of my house, through my backyard, and came around the right side of my house. I screamed while practically falling through the door. My mom looked at us like we were insane, and I yelled, "Close the door." Kayla slammed it shut and looked out the window. "Where is he? Where did he go?" Kayla said, running to look out the front living room windows. "Who? What are you talking about?" My mom said, looking at me completely confused. "Someone was following us. It was someone dressed as Michael Myers." "No, don't," I yelled as my mom opened the door and stepped outside, peering around the front yard. She stepped out to the driveway. I nervously watched out the screen door. She turned and yelled back to me, "Well, there's no one now. It may have been just someone messing with you." This thought did cross my mind. It is Halloween after all. But to think a grown man, I'm assuming, is walking around alone, messing with two young girls, stalking them for so long, is just extremely creepy. I have to say, since I'm older now and have seen the movies at least a million times, that stalker guy was 100% spot on with exactly how Michael is in the movies. The walking slowly, but gaining on us so fast at the same time. Disappearing and popping up out of nowhere. Like I said, it may as well have been the real Michael Myers. But also the fact that this scenario was my #1 childhood fear, that I've had multiple nightmares about. And even though I'm much older now, reminiscing that night still gives me chills till this day. It's just, I can't help but wonder if it really was actually a prank gone too far, or if that person had more sinister intentions in store for us. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to today's episode. I truly hope you enjoyed it. If you like these stories and want to hear more creepy tales, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any upcoming stories. Share this video with your friends and comment below. Which of these stories gave you the creeps and chills?